Swooning for some jazz.
Let Nothemba Madumo serve you up some jazz and beyond
On 702 and CapeTalk.
Jazz and Beyond on 702 and CapeTalk with me, Nothemba. We are in the month of April still, and of course we are still celebrating Jazz Appreciation Month. And this coming Thursday will be the International Jazz Day. And I just thought on Jazz and Beyond today, we have a conversation about how we can keep South African jazz alive. And hopefully this question is going to be able to be answered today. Because we, have to also just bear in mind that as much as, there are curators, there are creators, there are artists, there are jazz club owners, there are promoters, event producers, there are academics, there are writers, there are streaming platforms, there's archivists, and of course there's you, the jazz lover and the jazz listener. And these jazz activists and a lot of people in the value chain. And if we had to properly discuss, keeping jazz alive, we would need to probably have 150 people in the room, because so many people play a very important role in making sure that South African jazz lives, breathes, and grows, and is also remembered. So I have, decided that our theme is going to be just beyond the heritage, just looking forward into building a sustainable jazz ecosystem. How do we do that? So I've invited into the studio some very important people in this jazz space. Mpumi Dhlamini is the first one I'm going to introduce. He's a South African multi-instrumentalist, award-winning producer, composer, and of course known for his extensive work in jazz and cross-genre musical exploration. And he's known to play, 12 instruments or even more. Hi, Mpumi, how are you?
I'm fine. Yes.
Welcome to Jazz and Beyond. Mantwa Chinuamadi. We all know her as the prominent creative and music industry executive. She does serve as the CEO of T Music Man, and she's the long-standing producer of and director of the internationally acclaimed Standard Bank Joya Jazz. Mantwa, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And then we also have a prominent South African jazz, should I say, scholar, curator, historian, lover, passionate lover, who is widely recognized for his dedication in preserving and promoting the legacy of, South African jazz. Simon Dlouf, how are you?
I'm good.
Great. I'm glad all of you have been here before. And our last guest is joining us from Cape Town via Zoom, Atiya Khan. She's a Cape Town-based, she's an art journalist, a researcher, a DJ, whose work is really deeply intertwined with the preservation and exploration of South African jazz history. And, for almost 2 decades now, she's been documenting the country's cultural landscape, and with a specific focus, of course, on the intersection of jazz, the underground movements, and also some resistance. And she goes around the world, performing as a DJ and with some beautiful sets. And she loves to pay tribute to some of the jazz legends as she does so. Atiya, welcome to Jazz and Beyond yet again.
Thank you so much, Nothemba. Thanks so much for having me. And hi, everybody in the room also.
Hi, Atiya.
Thanks, Atiya. Maybe I'll just take this question around everybody, around, building a sustainable jazz ecosystem. What does that even mean? Is it something that's possible? because we were talking about, documenting South African jazz. We're talking about archiving beyond the legends. What about today's voices? We're talking about the recordings of jazz and the experiences people have in experiencing jazz. Maybe I'll start with you, Mpumi, since you are near me.
No, you know what I was hoping for? I was hoping you go to Prasai. Because him and I do this a lot. So can he please go first so that I can...
You want him to lay the groundwork.
Yes, so that I can play devil's advocate after, because I know where he's going to go. And then, yes.
Okay, Simon.
Right. Thanks for the opportunity. And I think this is a conversation that is, it comes at the right time. When we're celebrating international jazz, and it gives us an opportunity to reflect on what is happening in the country. But I want to start by saying South African jazz carries a profound cultural, historical, and spiritual significance, right? And yet, its richness, despite the fact that it has got global relevance, its ecosystem remains fragmented, under-supported, and structurally constrained, right? And I believe that to ensure the sustainability of South African jazz, we must move beyond these isolated efforts. There's a lot that is happening, but unfortunately, it's not happening within a unified system. There's a lot of brilliance, but it's fragmented. And that for me is what is stifling the growth and the prosperity of South African jazz. So we need an ecosystem. And in simple terms, the term ecosystem itself is borrowed from ecology, where different parts depend on each other for the system to survive, right? Take a simple example in ecology itself. You've got trees in the forest. I'm looking at the screenshot here, so I'm going to use the trees example. Trees produce oxygen. Animals need oxygen to breathe. Oxygen with 2 molecules of hydrogen creates rain. So you need the oxygen that the trees produce for rain to come down. Rain come down, nourishes the earth, which feeds the trees themselves. The animals who need the oxygen as well are helping to spread the seed. So each aspect, as much as it plays its unique role helps the next system to function. Take it to South African jazz, you need the artists who are producing the music. You need the broadcasters who are helping to amplify the music. You need spaces where music can be performed, right? And at the moment, unique to South Africa, most of the jazz is performed in restaurants. So places where there's another business, which is the main business, and the performance is used as an extra. And what that does, it creates what we call gatekeeping, because if the main purpose of inviting an artist is your business, then you'll be selective on who you choose. So some artists will be left out, and only those who are seen to be attracting a business would then get invited. But you also need, and this is where a conversation that must happen with people like Mpumi, that the music needs to reflect the life experiences of the audience. Audience needs to connect with the music. And what is currently happening in South Africa now is that we're creating a lot of music that seems to appeal to outside markets. And hence you're seeing most of our artists being invited to perform elsewhere. But the music is not speaking to the audience back at home. Right? Okay. So you need all those aspects coming together, because without radio, this jazz will not expand, will not be amplified. Right?
That's too much responsibility you're putting on us.
No. Everybody's got their own responsibilities. Platforms like the one I'm managing has got also a responsibility to keep the conversation going. Yeah. We're also seeing the issue with the CDs and streaming platforms and so on. I think technology is moving too fast for South Africans. It is moving way too fast, faster than I can adopt. I'm from a place where music is shared. And now suddenly I'm told Spotify, listen by yourself. Yes. It's just, it doesn't work with me that I must put earphones and listen alone and just bob my head like this. I prefer music that is shared.
And jazz is such a communal experience in the first place. Mantwa, I mean, he's talking about the many people who play a role in the ecosystem, but and I think the operative word he used there was the fragmentation of every one of us who play a role. And what have you found in your experience, especially when you put together, events and workshops, and because you involve quite a lot of people in the value chain when you prepare for, the Joy of Jazz and all the other events that Team Music Man does?
I think the problem with this is we have put a full stop on what we think our ecosystem is. We have rich talent. And every time a person looks at an artist, I look at Mpumi and think that Mpumi can come and perform, put his mics on, put the stage together and all that. If we put it in a simple way, I always take it like a food chain. There's somebody who's going to create, somebody who's going to pack, somebody who's going to label it, somebody who's going to pack it, somebody's, it should go like that. And if we can look at this whole ecosystem as, for us or for me, it's not only the gigs, it's not only the players or the musicians. I take it up to the auntie that will bring his, this little kid for the first time at the festival. Then we're going to have it being a structure that we can all say, if I book Mpumi to come and perform, who's going to set up the stage? Who's going to sell tickets? I see promoters or curators of events being the sound engineer, being the PR woman or lady or PR person or the marketer. I cannot do that. We do have an ecosystem. It's not just, there is no structure that's in place that we can say, as Mantwa, I will curate with other people that I work with, because I don't just curate alone. I consult. I consult to other musicians. I consult to people like Bo Brasai, yourself. Then we take this product to another section. If the trees had kept their oxygen and didn't give it to the animals, the trees will be stuck with that oxygen and the animals will die. So if we can learn as people to say, I don't believe in the buck stops here when it comes to this kind of structures and systems.
Atia, where you are sitting, my dear, in Cape Town, and when you travel the world, and I'm sure you have a sense as well of how other jazz communities, celebrate and promote and make sure that, the jazz genre from their countries is acknowledged and is seen and heard by other people. What are we doing?
I think it won't be fair to compare because you're looking at first world systems with a history of venues, lots of access to equipment, a media, often a functioning media, which we don't, for me personally as a journalist, I don't feel like we have in South Africa. As a writer, I don't think we have a functioning media. So I think it's not fair to compare. I think that for me, the ecosystem, in my opinion, because I'm in Cape Town, I'm from Joburg, but I'm in Cape Town, so I have a sense of what's happening in Joburg because I'm connected to musicians there. But I mean, South Africa is not just Joburg and Cape Town. South African jazz is the whole country. And I think we tend to ignore what is happening in Bloemfontein, what is happening in the Eastern Cape, what is happening in Durban. So when we talk about ecosystem, there's a lot more money flowing in Joburg. That experience of what you guys go through is unique to you. For me, my experience with jazz is watching it first live That's how I know it. It was always first live, not like by following the music, because there were enough venues, there were enough places for people to play. Now my experience is that there's actually no venues, maybe a handful. And what makes a venue for me is having a piano, and oftentimes we don't have that. Also, not the music being secondary to the food and the drinks, not the drinks being super expensive, having a sound engineer, having a journalist writing about the gig, maybe a review, if we can even talk about reviews. We don't have reviews anymore. And not just PR, as a journalist, my frustration is everything is PR now, and where's the criticism? There are a handful of writers still doing this, possibly not getting paid at all. But oftentimes within my own ecosystem, I can tell you that when an album was being launched by an artist, they would send it to you. They would be like, this is my record. We are first launching it with a performance. Can you come to the performance and then perhaps write about it? It's not a guarantee it will be written about, because that's PR, remember? And now artists can't even have album launches, because sometimes they just launch things online. And then you're like, oh, this thing happened, And so then you rely on radio and everything else to get the info, or following on Bandcamp. So I think the digital world, we can't ignore what has happened there and how that has changed the way we consume sound and the ecosystem, but how it's disjointed our own ecosystem between writers, photographers, spaces, sound people, tech people, the door people, the bar people. I've worked at a jazz club in Cape Town called the Mahogany. So I know when I was taking a break from journalism, I was doing the door, I was doing artist liaison. So I understand. And it's incredibly hard, even internationally, for a venue to survive on just door takings. I think there has to be business models in place. We've seen it happen even with things like the Orbit and these kinds of places. Like, there has to be other models in place to keep places surviving.
When you talk about a functioning media, Atia, what does that look like to you?
Well, a functioning media is, if Mpumi releases an album and I want to write about it, I should be able to pitch. Well, firstly, a functioning arts media is a newspaper or online publication that has an arts team. We do not have that anymore. Before, the ecosystem used to be that we would have an arts editor who would commission pieces and journalists on that team that were paid a salary. As they started cutting out arts, because arts is the least important in media, it seems, even though artists are going to be here until the apocalypse happens, but arts, suddenly we had to freelance. Then you get paid per word. Then you get taxed on that piece. So if you're getting paid 3,000 Rand, you're only getting paid 2 months later about 1,500 or 2,000. How are you surviving on rent? So most arts journalists, perhaps as outside of myself, have kind of given up, gone into other work, corporate work, communications, PR, lecturing. But I have stubbornly stuck to it, because I have been doing this for almost 18 years, and I realized the need for it, the need for discussion, the need for history, especially considering our history with apartheid and all the censorship of Black music. So if you think about how much was censored, we have worked to uncover all this history. And now who's going to do that work? Yeah. And no one's going to do it, because no one's going to get paid. Even big publications that you guys might respect, I can tell you now, are not paying writers. So why must I offer my work for free? You might as well start a Substack. And who is reading? Are people still reading? So I'll give you a very quick example before I give the other panelists time, because I know panels are tricky. When the Cape Town International Jazz Festival happened, I wrote a caption on my Instagram post, a caption, which is an Instagram social media post. And people were telling me from all over the world, thank you for your review. And I was shocked, because all it was 3 or 4 sentences strung together, just explaining something, but this is kind of how bad it's gone, when you look at reviews of jazz festivals, you're not getting that critical depth of writing. You don't know who to, besides a handful of people who we already know who they are.
Yeah. You're painting a very sad state of affairs.
sorry, guys. Sorry to be the party pooper of the group.
But for me, also just trying to move this as quickly as possible in the time that we have. I mean, I think we've sort of like established, the status quo and the things. But I'd like to hear from Mpumi, since you didn't want to start, just from your position where you're sitting as an artist. And just reflecting on what some of the guests have said.
Yes.
And I also want to then move it forward with, the South African jazz sound today. What is it? When we say South African jazz, what are we saying? Because I might think it's different from you. You might think South African jazz is different because now, of course, we've got the legends, but we've got the new music that's coming, and the new artists, and I don't know whether it's in the way it is, jazz is packaged, or it needs rebranding or repackaging, but there's also the genre blending as well. I know my question is too long for you.
No, I got it. No.
Oh,
I'll put it together with the first one. So,
Okay.
as I said, you see, this was planned. I'm going after Prasai now. So, here's the first problem. We're going to speak about the tree, right? Firstly, the tree has to be aware that it's a tree. It's not a lion. And let me backtrack again. As a musician, when I first learned, I'm on 16 instruments now, by the way.
Oh.
And for me to get to that point, I understand my function. The function of a musician is to create, right? Performance is an outlet. So we need to start there, because I understand that the people like Prasai, who are like the appreciators, they want to see us. But the problem is maybe 80-90% of the musicians I know have a mild depression of some kind. So the only way to fix that is in the practice room, So that's the first problem. So when you speak about the ecosystem, we have to fix our musical structure first. For example, in this country, if you play an instrument, you can produce. It's good enough. So a lot of the albums that we get produced in this country, it's a guy that has the same band that plays his gigs that do the same album. Check it. Most of the international stuff, most of them, you see Harish Raghavan play. He'll play with Taylor XD. He'll play with Emmanuel Wilkins live. But the band that recorded is completely different. So it's about getting the people that are relevant for the thing and not just having a group of friends. And then we'll go back to, now I'm going to mesh it up a bit. And then we go to Atia's point about a place like the Orbit. I can speak about it because it's gone. But the Orbit had the same people playing every time and then just revolving. So this time it's the bass player. It's 5 people, but it's the bass player that's the front man this week. Then it's the pianist, and so on and so on and so on and so on, right? So these are kind of the issues that we have from a developmental standpoint. We have a very big issue, music development for musicians. It's very difficult. For example, like Prasai says, we've got a lot of music in this country.
We do. I agree with him.
But unfortunately, because we don't have standards, our stuff, for example, in corporate, we know that you would have a junior if somebody wants to come in here. Whereas in music, I can buy a keyboard this week and want to be on Joe of Jazz next week and headline. So we've got those issues where there is no, I don't want to call it a hierarchy. But for example, me starting bass last year, and then you've got a Prafana Zulu. I can't think I'm the same. But in music, you can be. And that's where some of the structural issues now come. Because what happens is this now, we've got jazz musicians that are released. The model has always been jazz must be released every 5 years. Now the question is this, if you're releasing every 5 years and you're in the industry for 30 years, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, so you've got 6 albums in 30 years, right? Okay, cool. Now where are you hoping to gig? Because in 6 months your album's already old. So you see, this is where the issues now come in, and going to Prasai's point again of saying the CDs. We can't print CDs because, number one, we'll print 500 CDs and then 20 people buy, and then what do I do with the rest? You know? So we've got a lot of structural issues, but I think if we fix them So I compartmentalize and say, okay, within the music fraternity, because we say South African jazz, what is South African jazz? And there's this, I complained about it, I think a month ago, and I did it intentionally. I was studying nonsense. Yeah. I like to do that, and I just laugh. But people think I'm like disgruntled and I'm pressing. There's this, like, if I go, you can identify at least 10 artists that have a song like that. At least 10. So the issue with that is it's good and it's bad. It kind of creates an identity for music, but then it locks the rest of us who don't want to do that thing. So it sounds like you're not doing jazz. And then I got told by certain awards thingy that my music was alternative. I'm like, what? You know what I'm saying? I'm like, you have no idea what's coming. I'm going to make it even worse now in September, because if that's your view. So us sorting out the ecosystem thing has to start with, because I think from a festival standpoint, I've worked with this Mantwa, and I understand that there's different departments, and I understood it. I knew who to speak to for a certain thing. So from a corporate standpoint, there was a structure there. You have a structure here, so we know that KG is doing this and whatever. But within music, we don't know that, because find a jazz album in South Africa that's written executive producer. We don't have that, because that's the guy that's supposed to overlook the entire process. Nobody overlooks. It's just like, call a bunch of your friends, let's go record music, and then just have fun, and then we drop it, So those are kind of the issues that I think we have. And lastly, from a sound standpoint, we're not moving forward.
What is South African jazz sound today? When you say these people are not playing South African jazz, what are you saying? What are they not playing?
Yeah, it's a conversation I would really not want to entertain. Because we are a country that is highly diverse. And if you listen intentionally, you can pick up if jazz is from Pretoria.
Absolutely. Or
that side north of Pretoria. If you listen intentionally, you can pick up if it's from Cape Town. Right? If you listen intentionally, you can pick up it's from the Eastern Cape and the KZN and so on. And there is beauty in that. We offer that kind of diversity. But in its essence, South African jazz is about history. It's about spirituality. It's about it's a conversation between an artist and audience, right? And it speaks about things that are relevant to us, and how you present it. It's neither here nor there. Jazz in itself will always have one foot in the past and the other foot in the present. It will always look back at what we did best and then take some of that, rework it, and present it for future interpretation. So I wouldn't be too strict on that, because we are different. The reason for creating music down south has got to do with issues that affect us here. And so it will be different to what Bossa Nova would sound like, for example, because it is about their circumstances and their environment. And it's beautiful like that, right?
And their experience. I like the tree narrative. Because funny enough, yesterday my son and I shared a clip of this guy who was talking about that the tree grows in two directions.
Correct.
It grows
up and down.
Up, and it grows down.
Correct.
And he was saying, as it grows down, what you see up there is exactly as it is as it's growing down.
Awesome.
So I think from that we can capture what you are trying to say as well. That South African jazz, you can't think as you're growing up or you are being seen or heard now that you have no relation to what's going on underground in the roots.
Spot on.
Sure.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Can I just add something there?
Yeah.
The matter of the relationship between the musician and the audience. It's a tricky one, because the minute we start creating for audience, is that not pop? Because remember, the minute, because that's the paradox here. We as jazz musicians claim we are doing this, and we woke up, and then there's the sky, then it fell, then the rain, and then we've got these stories, right? The minute we add the commercial aspect, which we need, because we need to sell records, well, most people. I'm one of those that don't. That's why you've never seen me do a launch. I intentionally don't. That's why if you see me drop an album, you are one of the first people that have it. And I don't even announce my albums because I'm not in that
They are
space.
the economics of jazz.
No, for sure. You know? So the point I'm trying to get to here is the fact that we need to balance the idea of passion here, you know. And unfortunately, we have a genre where, okay, let me not go there. Let me not go there. But what I was trying to say is, the minute we add the word economics, it's no longer jazz. It is now pop, which is popular music. And the minute everybody does the same genre, with all of us doing din, 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 we don't have jazz. We now are back to pop. Because remember, what pop means was popular music. Whatever everybody else is doing and is selling at the time makes it pop. So it is, at this point, I don't believe we have, as an industry, you must say, like Mankuruma, I always make this example with Prasai. If Mesh and Makatiene are not available for a particular gig, who do you book in for that sound? It's gone. If Daliso's not available as a double bass player in Joburg, we have a problem. That's why you see him playing 6 artists at Joy of Jazz. So we may say we have a lot of musicians. We don't. We struggle, you know, and we need to be very realistic about that. But going back to that same point of saying we need to figure out what jazz is, because when we speak about jazz, we speak about the rebellion, and the rebellion was going against the norm, right? And once we go back into the norm, it's pop. And for me, we're an 80% pop at this point.
Atia. DJ Atia.
Yeah, but
When you play Atia and you're saying I'm playing South African jazz, and this I'm asking because, quite importantly, you're an archivist yourself, and you have played a very important role in making sure a lot of the music of the legends is heard, not only here at home, but also where it comes from, why it even existed. You know, you've got the backstory and everything there. So with a whole lot of innovation which comes with creatives, where do we draw the balance in terms of what is really South African jazz, or what is the new sound, or I don't know?
So I think that I spent a lot of time doing talks and playing sets on the history of South African jazz, right? So if you speak to some people, someone again like Abdullah Ibrahim, he will say there's no such thing. We're not jazz musicians, we're just musicians. What is this thing you keep trying to box us in, right? That's his take. But clearly, if you look at the history of this music, how it came to South Africa, how it fused with US influences, with people who played in like war bands, like Gwigwi Mrebi was a sergeant in the army, and that's how what Gwigwi wanted to play with what was coming from these records from the US. So I think like jazz is, and it will always be changing. There is a structure, there is a sound from Arabi and how it evolved from the 20s onwards, right? But it also is an innovative thing. And I think to give musicians that freedom, for me, my love for the sound is one of my favorite types of sounds in the world, right? Whether you want to call it a genre or whatever, most of the stuff is marketing terms. But for me, it's about the freedom in the history and the fight against apartheid from that sound. And actually, it's the freedom of sound moving forward. So it's to allow musicians that creative expression. One of the things I hate is how corporate the sound and everything has become, and the display of it has become, you know. My favorite type of jazz is is even in a jam, when a musician steps up and he's just freely just improvising, and that's his expression, that's what's coming out of him. And then someone else can step up and they're like, okay, cool, I love this, I'm going to riff on that. And that's like where the magic, that's why for me, a lot of the magic is in the live. But I also think as hip hop, as we've seen hip hop enter, as we've seen with people like Benjamin Jefter, Kwaito enter influences, like we cannot stop the music evolving over time because it always drew influences from places. So why would it stop at a point? That's not the point of it. I think the point of it is to not stop its creative expression, So I am, as whether I'm working or unemployed or getting paid or not, I'm always following the music. And I'll sometimes try to do radio shows and incorporate the sounds, or if we have the vinyl or the record, play it in DJ sets so people can listen. But, in terms of the history, why I focus so much on this is because a lot of these records were banned. And so we didn't grow up with them. The music is not on the internet. We don't know about these histories. A lot of these very rare records I found in places like Switzerland and Europe. So why is this music sitting there? And we don't have knowledge of these people. So it's also for me, just as maybe if this is the last point from me, just to say that I'm tired of talking about the same heroes in jazz all the time. There are more people that will never get mentioned, and it's important for us to highlight by listening, by talking, by upholding the memory about that whole group of people. Just like apartheid wasn't won by Mandela only, it's about the collective. It's always about the community. And I feel that capitalism and the corporate vibes have infringed on that community in a big way with jazz.
Yeah. I agree with you in terms of when, for instance, if you Google South African jazz legends, only 5 names will come up.
Yeah.
Nothing else will come up. So that's why it's very important to archive and have libraries and have all these the books and stories and everything that's been written in the past. I think there are homes and people and relatives of some of the people who've played such an important role in jazz who are sitting with information in their homes, and they don't know how valuable it is.
Yes, absolutely.
If it were to be shared, kind of thing. But just for a jazz appreciator and a lover, where do I find jazz? Where does jazz live in South African jazz live? Where do I go? I've got visitors. Hey, listen, South African jazz, everyone is raving about it. Where do we go?
That's where the ecosystem question comes
I
in.
can't wait.
I
can't wait for Mantwa in September. Yes, Atiya, go ahead.
No. I get asked this question a lot. I'm sure everybody in the room does also. And I'm, the reason you have me here is because I'm maybe often the voice of dissent or the opposite opinion on things.
You always are going against the grain. Yeah, go ahead.
But I will be like, okay, if you want the vibe of jazz, like the vibe and the call and response, then try to go to Langa on a Sunday for jazz in the native yards, or try and go to a place where you've got a very lively crowd, where you can hear that interaction between the artist and the people, and you've got that space where the artists can play whatever they want. There's other places where you can find music, all these bars and restaurants. I will say one last point on this, which is that in Cape Town, jazz is becoming a serious buzzword, as if not in Cape Town only, but in the whole country. It's suddenly people are jumping onto it, including brands, FNB, G-Star Raw, all of these corporate people. And it's this music has existed for decades. Why suddenly now is it time to monetize it?
Why do you think that is so? Why do you think the sun has come shining in at this moment for them?
I don't know. I have no idea. I absolutely have no idea. All I care about is that the people are getting paid. The artists must get paid. Okay. That's all I care about, honestly. But I would love to know myself, because with any money comes conditions.
Yeah. So, Mantwa, where do you go when you want to go besides working the whole year on Joy of Jazz? When you want to discover artists, when you want to see performances. Where are we going? If you're not listening to Nothemba on Sundays on 702 and CapeTalk, what are you doing the rest of the week?
Look, I don't want to always compare us with other countries, but I always feel like we have minimum. A jazz club will open up, and 3 months down the line, it's no more a jazz club, but just a club. Brasai spoke about restaurants inviting artists, and I think jazz is a beautiful name. Everybody
it's
is
sexy.
just, it's sexy. We get jazzy and all that stuff. If even the restaurants that are inviting these artists to come and perform do it every week, you're gonna have this jazz artist. Not an artist that you'll pick up because of popularity and just put jazz in front of them. We will have more places. And there's something beautiful about music as a whole, is food, Brasai. I want to eat my food and listen to this beautiful music. There are places, Hughes just opened, and they are keeping up that jazz vibe. And we're praying that it's not only going to be the usual lofty, we will see other artists that are not in certain circles. Jazz, or the jazz sector, has got a lot of gatekeeping. It's me and my crew that I know. It's Mpumi Dhlamini there. And if all of us, I want to go to a show or to an event, and I think even as curators, I want to curate and book Mpumi and don't see 10 other people that I saw in other bands. I laugh at the festival when artists send their list, their lineup list, and you realize there's one person who's going to play 20 times.
Yes.
Did we do any research as artists, or did we even go and look for others? If we, as artists, can just pull that, younger kid, the newer ones that are coming in, we will obviously have more bands, more performances. And I think in Joburg, we saw light. There's another place opened, the Brewers something.
Yes.
Yeah, where the Orbit was.
Yes, where Orbit
Josie
was. Yes, I'm hoping that we'll see places like that, coming up. The new kids, the younger generation, and I know people change what they play because now we want to attract the younger generation with money. If we can, as artists, can stick to what they do. Never change your origin or never change your sound because, hey, I'm going to play Bramfontein. Hey, I must play hip music because there's kids from Vets that are going to come in. So sometimes I think venues suffer that because now we go and look for people that are popular. And I believe that venues and festivals like ours should be a platform of education in some way. I need to have somebody in the lineup that people have never seen, never heard of, but they're going to come and see that person. And again, we throw it back to media. Do not sell those people as if you're selling fat cake. Can we sell, the contact alien right? I've heard a person saying, Mantwa Chinuamadi, she graduated from the University of Cape Town. She has a PhD in music and all those things. I say, yeah, it's very good to hear about it. When are we going to start talking about this person's music?
And look, there obviously different areas have different types of access for jazz lovers in terms of the clubs or, as you say, restaurants, and some just musicians just create spaces on their own in the street or wherever, kind of thing. Yes, we've got so many things that I think as part of the ecosystem needs to happen, like touring, for instance, bands touring and being known in different regions and so forth. But I think because I also want us to cover this before we run out of time, the issue of being able to honor legends without freezing the genre in time, kind of thing, and in that process being able to get the new listener, the younger generation who are going to carry this music, forward, which I think becomes very important in some of the work that I do, and the Atia does as well. And whether or not should we just play the music, or should they be, a whole lecture around Mpumi's song, or should I, should the storytelling part of it, so people, the new listeners understand how are we packaging this thing for new participants as listeners as well as creators.
Yeah, I think the very topic of discussion today answers that we've got a fragmented system. We've got elements that are not speaking to each other.
How do we get now in terms of, let's get into going forward? How do we...
Going forward needs us to set up a structure. There needs to be few elements agreeing to work together. We need... back to the restaurant issue, we need jazz spaces. We need places where jazz is the main business of the day. Take the Joy of Jazz model and the food and everything. You've got a space where you listen and a space where you eat. So you want to eat, you leave this space, go and eat. When you're done eating, come back. This is now the jazz space, right? Okay. So you don't eat and this is the frustration even with these beautiful restaurants that are popping up. You go there to listen to a musician, and you've got audience chip-chapping and plates and whatnot. And often I want to get up and say, shh, I'm here for the music, right? Yeah. And I think this is where we're missing it. And these places will then tend to, again, invite only those that they think will bring in the money. So we need a space where jazz is performed, where we could go and just check it out and say, oh, I spotted a new bass player. I think if I can mix him with Mpumi, something beautiful could come. We don't have access to that. Once we've discovered that, then the music needs to play. And once the music is playing, audience needs to get involved and engaged and educated. Schools that are teaching music are teaching international stuff. They're not teaching our local history. So they're not teaching them about Mankunkus and the Esran Lukanas, and they're teaching them about culture, which is good, but don't ignore what this country has produced. And the day we start finding, those who are willing to work within this structure, we can only grow it from there. Yeah.
Atia, what are we doing wrong? What must we do going forward? Are we? Is the box too colorful in which we are presenting this thing, or is it just too boring? Why are we not creating excitement for people to put in money, for people to make their buildings available for this thing? What are we selling this in such a dull package? Presenting it in such a dull package, because people are like, oh no, there they come again, those people.
No, I personally, I'm not clued up on how to sell things. I honestly, I think we are all trying and we do our best. And we all play a very important role. For instance, one of the things with the DJ collective that we started was to focus it on the idea of listening, because I think the same way that Bra Simon and a lot of people in the room learn anything is through listening, and so I myself, my education for jazz came from watching and listening. I didn't grow up with a family who introduced me to it. I didn't grow up, going to gigs and on the east end of Joburg in Benoni. I didn't grow up knowing that there were places I could go to. Everything I know, I had to learn myself and teach myself. And one of the things I want to say, because maybe I've been too harsh or critical, but one of the things that blows my mind about this music is how young it continues to be.
Sure.
And in South Africa, honestly, even now in Cape Town, where we don't have the money like Joburg, we don't have the huge
we
corporate
thought you
sponsors.
have the money.
Aibo.
We're sitting here and thinking that
No,
the
we
money
don't.
is there.
No, we don't. No, we don't. You wouldn't see like a use or something like opening up the site. You know what I mean? Everything is very DIY. Everything is very independent. One of the things is you're getting very young students, not even necessarily university students, but there's a constant flow of young people into the sound. And this is why I always say this notion of jazz being old or whatever, that doesn't apply to South Africa. Maybe other countries, but not in South Africa, because it's constantly young. It keeps changing. I have to give credit to the fact that there are young people who know that CDs are difficult, vinyl sales are difficult, online sales are difficult. Taking the door takings is not enough to survive. You have to maybe teach. You have to. You can't be a full-time jazz musician and just do that unless you're playing with like big artists and you're doing a lot of touring. That would be the dream. But I must say, I have to give respect to the fact that we're keeping something about this music attracts younger people. And my thing is, I don't know, as I say, how to sell it to make it sexy, but I do think that the value of it is just in listening and giving it the time to learn a little bit more. Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I, have to go out of my way to discover music. Not only in this country, and I first start here. And there's music that is sent to me. And a lot of it, sometimes it's like, I don't know whether you have listened to my show before you sent me this, because there's no alignment,
exactly.
But people are looking for platforms and spaces for their, people are continuously creating. So if they are hearing that, okay, no one else likes the music I'm making, I'll just say it's jazz then. Let me see if I can get it. Let me get it somewhere else, because there's all this labeling and shelving music. And I also like what you said, and he says it a lot. Abdullah, that and especially with South African jazz, it's not, you can't quite say this is the sound of South African jazz. It sounds different at 12 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, in Bloemfontein, in Mpumalanga, because it is so rich and in depth and character, that there's so many different sounds of South African jazz. But I think when Mpumi goes into the studio and says, I'm producing a jazz album, what do you say? What are you going to come up with?
Me? See, the thing is, so next year is like my 20th year in the industry. So my first album was in 2007. And I think the first mistake musicians make is that we think we must all be front men. First problem. Number two, we think we must all be on stage. I'm just trying to speak about like the different income streams. So for example, when I gave up on performing, I literally stopped performing altogether. In fact, I think Jerv Jazz, she brought me back. I told her that I'm not doing. I was done with gigs, because for me, they call you, but they have a certain expectation of what they want you because of what you're saying. We may say there's no South African jazz, Mara, we know it's there. There's this thing. It's there. It's got a color, but we don't know it, So I think for me with the Joy of Jazz thing, and I'm not like hyping it up to be honest, but because I try and speak as honest as I can. But this was the first time where, so my when she spoke about the rider, right? When you disclose how many band members you have or whatever, my initial proposal to her said, I'm going to have 7 people.
And you ended up with 40.
67
I had
people.
67.
Yo?
But
I want you to get to the
Yes.
to the 20-year celebration that you say you're having next year.
Yes. So it's just to go back to that point of hers that only one person was a guy that was playing for everybody else, and that was Pelelo, because he's also my business partner. Everybody else was students from, because so from an ecosystem standpoint, that was an inadvertent, it was like an indirect ecosystem that we created, because she called me firstly for the workshop, and then I called a whole bunch of people that we didn't know. And there were just a whole bunch of my friends that I was like, he's going to do bass, he's going to do piano. Because I could have done it alone, but I just called everybody that I knew. And I called Mantwa, because Mantwa and I, Mlangeni, because we were in the same class at NSA. So it made sense. Zoe also went to NSA. So it's like, okay, let's call those guys. But the funny thing is, after that, I then booked 5 more workshops without her knowing. I just told her, give me banners, I'm going. Now, when we went to CJC, those are the students that I ended up using on stage. And there was a choir I used. So all those people were actually from the workshop, you see, because that's like...
I'm happy to hear
Yes.
all that.
Yes.
I have to wrap it up.
Okay, no problem.
And I want us to look to the future.
No, it's... Okay.
That's why I asked you that question.
Yes.
Can we go to
Okay,
going forward?
going forward.
Mpumi,
Yes.
when you say you're doing a jazz album, what are you doing, and what do you envision is going to happen to that jazz album? Nothemba's going to play it. Mantwa's going to invite you to a show, or even Brasai there is going to invite you. He's also got a radio show, by the way.
Yeah, no?
Yeah, kind of thing. Or he's going to go on social media and like, hey, Tumi's got a new album.
Yes.
Yeah. And then what?
I don't think of it that way. I just go in and I write.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
But the question though, just in wrapping,
Yes.
you said it's fragmented, Brasai.
It is.
How do we what's the opposite of it, of fragmented?
Unfragmented.
Unfragmented. Very
Consolidated.
Yeah.
very quickly, and all of you, I'd like you to maybe in the spaces that you are. And do we need one group of people to take this, or everybody in their own spaces can do
and this
it?
is the beauty of South African jazz, and this is why it has survived this long, is that as much as we don't have an aligned structure, we do have pockets of excellence.
Absolutely.
Only problem
Absolutely.
is the fragmentation. So if you look at everything we call excellent, and we can find a way to align, and there are people already doing it. If you look for them, they are, except they are doing it in their small corner in the Cape or the Eastern Cape or KZN. That is the biggest challenge South Africa is facing, is fragmentation. So we need to say, you are already doing it and you did not ask anyone to pay you to do it. Do you mind if we can align?
Okay.
And
aligning, some people think, he wants to take my shine, this one.
no, keep your shine.
Mantwa.
You're doing it good.
I actually loved what Mpumi just said. We all don't have to be, the front man.
Yeah.
Somebody else can do it.
Sure.
And can do it with you. So if I always look at giving other people a chance. Everybody is doing everything that they're doing, but at some stage we need to come together and say, okay, from Untitled Basement, I'm going to get so and so to come and co-produce with me. From Mpumi's organization, I'm not going to be sitting and putting together workshops, but Mpumi can do that. I don't want to be curating a concept, but Athia can come and do that. So I see us going our separate ways, because we are guarding this little royal thing, little space that we have. In that, we then close up gaps that are now left vacant. But if we all work together,
And we are also preventing ourselves from learning. And from new ideas and new concepts on doing this thing. Atia, we're going forward. We want to disinfragment.
We want to
Consolidate.
Consolidate.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's enough space for everybody, and there really is enough space for all of us. And I think we just need to be open, be inclusive. Inclusivity is very important. And oftentimes the smartest people are never the ones included. The loudest people are the ones included. And I think in terms of, it can be a problem that sometimes we see the same players, but we can also look at it as a family, and people hearing. We do need more women. We do need more teachers. We need more books. We need more information. We need a lot more. So just to say that, when I mentioned that I do a lot of talks about the history of South African jazz, or these sonic lectures by playing and talking, there were a lot of wrongs that happened during apartheid that have still not been corrected, in the form of royalties, in the form of talking about musicians who had to play behind a curtain, like Winston Mankunku had to play behind a curtain while a white musician mimed his lyrics, and his name was changed to be like a white name. They called him Winston Man. And this happened, and it's out of our memory. We've pushed it. We don't know, or we don't remember some of the things that happened. And I think it's very important to highlight. We don't use apartheid as a buzzword to sell records. We actually highlight this history and talk about its importance alongside everything else that happens in culture. And my gripe with arts being pushed to the corner is that it's actually the most important part of society. And when I say arts, I mean everything, including jazz, whatever. I just think that we need to find a respect for it, and not ignore the people involved in that world as if it's just like a hobby or something fun on the side that you do, because this is how we live. This is our lives that we dedicate our time to,
Yeah, and I mean, art is an expression of who we are. It's our identity. It's our culture, expressing who we are at that moment in time, and we can't pretend we don't exist. I'd like to thank you guys. We have run out of time, and this is a conversation. We could also have a part 2, going forward, and maybe have other guests as well, because it's a continuous conversation. Because the sustainable jazz ecosystem, yes, it is about preserving the past, but more importantly, it is definitely about creating conditions where the artists can create, they can live, they can also be heard. And I'm hoping that this discussion just helps somebody think, and helps us consolidate. So thank you very much to my guests, Mantwa Chinuamadi and Atia, who's in Cape Town. You can go back to your meeting. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. Thank you.
Simon Ndlovu and Mpumi Dhlamini. And thank you. Please, you are absolutely welcome to comment on this conversation under, of course, our Jazz and Beyond Facebook page, and our 702 YouTube channel, and our Prime Media Plus platform. Thank you.
Come for the jazz and stay for the good times.
On Jazz and Beyond with Nothemba Madumo.
On 702 and Cape Talk.